Your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg is being sponsored by OnCue Marketing, Best Buy Benches, OmahaFastFoods.com, Certified Transmission, Omaha Magazine, Monahan Financial, Sholdit, NP Dodge Real Estate, Valpak, Kohl's Pharmacy, Centrus Federal Credit Union, Ideal Water. Welcome to Your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg, the show that will leave you feeling great about yourself, Omaha's heroes, and Omaha, where we live, work, and play. So park yourself on the bench and have fun. Hi, and welcome to this week's edition of Your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg, the show that you tune into every week to learn marvelous things about yourself, how to make your life better, how to really enjoy every moment of your waking life. Now, we do that 3 different ways. Number 1, you will learn 4 different motivational vignettes that are specifically designed for your personality. And then we're going to profile a nonprofit here in Omaha, Nebraska that does some tremendous work. You probably haven't heard of them, which is why it's important. And you know, every one of us in our lives, we want to have that very special part that's meant for us. And we know that every day we go out and audition for that. We always ask people to look at us and to pick us over anybody else. Now, we have somebody here today who can train you on how to do that perfectly. None other than Randy Nogg from Actors Etc. Limited. And Randy is a person who does terrific talent searches. He is an agent, a producer, and has his own theater group. So he's going to teach you all about auditions, all about interviews, all about taking your personality and making it special so that people select you over somebody else. Well, let's now begin with the first of the 4 motivational vignettes. Now, my question to you is as follows. In life, who do you admire the most? Now, I want you to really think about this. Which individual comes to your mind when you begin to say, you know what, the person I admire the most is this person? Now, once you have that person selected, what I would like you to do is to start to make a list of their personality traits. What is it that they have that you admire? Is it openness? Is it honesty? Is it ethics? Is it tenacity? Is it professionalism? Is it looks? Is it image? Is it the way they control their life? Is it their family life? What is it about that person that you admire the most? And I really want you to focus on it. I really want you to think about it, because the answer is going to be absolutely surprising. The person that you should admire the most is the person looking at the TV screen right now. That's you. That is the first person that should come to your mind when you talk about admiration. Now, I don't want you to be egotistical, because that doesn't make any sense at all. But I want you to sit back for a moment, and I want you to say to yourself, you know what? I admire myself. You know what? I've done some tremendous things in my life, and I am darn proud of them. And you know what? They didn't happen by accident. I made them happen. I have those personality traits that I admire in other people. Now, could you imagine getting up each and every morning and then saying yourself into the mirror, hey, I admire myself. I'm pretty cool. I'm a good guy. I got a lot done in my life, and I'm going to get a lot more done. As a matter of fact, I'm the person that might appear on somebody else's list. Now, how do you feel about that? Are you ready to take that challenge? Are you ready to select yourself as the individual that you admire the most? The answer should be unequivocally yes. You should do that every day, because when you do that, it heightens your self-confidence. It heightens your self-esteem. It heightens the respect that you have for yourself, and thereby the respect that other people will have for you. So your first step today is to put yourself on the number 1 list of people that you admire. Now, how many times have you gone to the ball game and you have gotten there in time, and I'm talking about baseball, and when you get there, you watch batting practice? Now, let's kind of think about that. You have these players that go up, and they're in the batting cage. And once they're in the batting cage, they're surrounded by other people, one of them being the batting coach. Well, here you have the pitcher. And what is the pitcher doing? Basically lobbing the ball in to the hitter. And then what always happens? You've been there. The hitter in batting practice does a great job with that ball. Line drive. You can hear it crack off the bat. You can see that thing sail all the way over the field. You can see that go into the stands. And you look at that person and you say, wow, great batting practice. That person is full of smiles. But you know what? It's all for naught. I hate watching batting practice. I think it's one of the stupidest exercises that these professional people go through. Why? Because it is not practice at all. I want you to imagine a real game. Is a pitcher lobbing the ball in? Absolutely not. They're doing 9,700-mile-per-hour fastballs. They have curveballs. They have sliders. They have sinkers. They have knuckleballs. But in batting practice, they're not doing that. It's all a facade. The question for us is, when we practice our trade, do we practice like batting practice where it's the stupidest thing in the world? Or do we make it as difficult as we possibly can in order to duplicate what life is really going to present to us? The answer should be very, very clear. I think the next time we go to a batting practice, we should demand that the pitcher pitches it fast. We should demand curveballs. When we go to training in the way we do things, in the way we want to get our skills better, we should each and every time do the same thing. The other thing that's totally stupid is home run derbies. There you go again. Here comes somebody lobbing the ball in. All of a sudden they get 28 home runs. But in the real game, nobody's lobbying it in. It's a facade. If you're going to practice how to be the best in your trade, when you practice, not if, to be even better than what you are, to excel, then you need to make sure you do the best you possibly can in getting the right practice for yourself. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about time management. And when we talk about time management, that's your time management in what you want to do about life. How do you establish long-term goals? How do you establish short-term goals? And how do you control them? I know it's a struggle for a lot of people, but I got a hot news flash for you. You do it every day when you go to the grocery store. Yeah, you do. Why? Because when you go to the grocery store, you make a selection of items that you're going to put in the refrigerator, which is short-term, and then you buy a bunch of stuff that you're going to be putting in the freezer, which is long-term. You're not going to use that right away. The stuff in the refrigerator, you got 10 days to use it. The stuff in the freezer, you can have potentially months. But you've planned ahead. You've planned your recipes ahead. That gives you the greatest opportunity to learn skills, to learn short-term planning and long-term planning. So don't fool yourself anymore by saying, I don't know how to plan. Just take the same techniques that you use when you go shopping and say to yourself as follows: in my refrigerator, here's my short-term goals of life. In my freezer, here are my long-term goals. And yes, they're going to thaw out once I take them out, because that's the way life is. You're going to prepare it, and you're going to practice for it. And I want to end with one thing that is different. You know that advertisement where people go into the insurance store and they begin to pick from Flo, you know Flo, the gal in the white dress? You begin to pick out one insurance product and another insurance product, and you love it. It's tailored for you. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to pick out personality traits from a store just like Flo does when she's in that commercial. And here's the ones I want you to pick out. I want you to pick out the ones we just talked about. I want you to pick out the refrigerator freezer. I want you to pick out how am I going to do short and long-term planning. I want you to pick out batting practice. I want you to say to yourself, each and every time that I go out into the marketplace, each and every time I go somewhere, I'm going to make sure that the practice that I get is the absolute best that can possibly be done. And then the other trait, of course, is the admiration. That's the trait that you want to pick from the shelf. Now ask yourself this question. If beginning right after this show, you were able to take those 3 personality traits off the shelf, imagine what the rest of your life will be like. You'll be terrific. You can ensure that, by the way. You'll know how great it is and how wonderful it's going to be for you when you pick that. So as I always say at the end of these segments, you have a choice. Your choice is, I listened to all this babble. It was nice. Well, the choice that you really have is to say to yourself, these are the things that I'm going to use starting today to make my life better so that I can enjoy the high of my life each and every time that I want to. And as we always do, I'm going to tell you about a nonprofit organization here in Omaha. And this week we're going to be talking about peer mentoring and support. Now listen carefully. There's an organization called the Nebraska Family Support Network, and it is a family peer-to-peer advocacy organization that was founded in 1991 by family members experiencing difficulties navigating Nebraska's system of care for their children. They now use knowledge gained in the mental and behavioral health, juvenile justice, and child welfare systems to help families grow through the challenges that they are facing. They believe that all families have strengths and are the experts in their own families. They team up with case professionals and they begin to provide services around the family that are all working to help the families reach their own goals. They offer hope, support, education, and they help locating community resources. Their services are offered to families at no cost, and sometimes just knowing you are not alone is the first step to healing. To find out more information about the Nebraska Family Support Network, call 402-345-0791 or visit their website, www.nefamilysupport.org. And now, let me have the opportunity to take your life, to show you how you can get the part in your life that you've been going after, the one that might have been elusive, the one that other people have always gotten, by introducing you to Randy Nogg. Randy, thank you so much for being on our show.
Sure, Andy.
And you know, we always say how excited people are to have somebody on the show. And I want the viewers to share the excitement that I have, because Randy is going to show us through his business, which is Actors Etc. Limited, on how to go ahead and how to audition for parts in your life by sharing with you his business. His business is involved in talent searches. He's an agent, he's a producer, and he produces theatrical events. And he needs people to do that. So Randy, let's get started.
Sure.
And tell me a little bit about how you got started with your company.
Well, with this company, I quite honestly almost fell into this.
Okay.
My background is actually in film and television production. That's what my degree is. I've been making films since I've been a little kid.
Wow. 8 millimeter?
I started with 8 and Super 8 and worked my way up.
You guys know what that is?
Yeah, that's true. The younger kids will have no idea.
That is.
But I had the degree and eventually moved out to Los Angeles, where I worked for 13 years.
Okay.
Tried to make things. I even produced my own low-budget comedy called Reefer Madness 2, The True Story.
Available on Madness 2.
Available on DVD on the website.
All right.
But moved back to Omaha several years ago. And my mother had this company, Actors Etc. Limited, which actually this year we're on our 40th anniversary.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. And I sort of backed into this because there wasn't a lot of production work at the time when I moved back.
Right.
She needed help on things, so I sort of just drifted in, helped her, and then eventually took over management of the company.
Fantastic. So what does the company do? It finds talent and does what with it, and who do you place the talent with?
Okay, well, a multi-part question.
Sure.
Okay, we get talent for everything from local commercials to films, videos, any kind of production that's going on locally or regionally, and occasionally on national basis. We also have our entertainment division called Theater to Go that we do entertainment, and you had mentioned that a little bit, which is a little bit different, but it still uses talent. And we hire people. Most of our actors are local, but they're Lincoln and surrounding areas. I even have people who live in LA and so forth will come back.
Interesting. Now, let's assume for a moment that here you are in Omaha, Nebraska. Now, you mentioned national. Is it fair to say that you've done commercials for national companies and have placed people in some other national events?
Yeah, I mean, for example, I'll give you a quick example, something recently which a lot of the people will have seen, the Larry the Cable Guy, the Prilosec commercial.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Right here, we got him right here on the show.
Not Larry, but fortunately, because Larry lives just outside of Lincoln, he's always required them to come here. So we, or our actors, I should say, have benefited. Now the latest commercial, sadly, they shot out in western part of the state, so we didn't have anything to do with it, but the previous 3 years, a lot of the people you've seen in those commercials are actors. And they got to benefit because it's a big national commercial. It's a union commercial, which rarely happens around here. So there is that national presence, or if the big feature films come through.
And I think it's amazing, which is one of the reasons we call this your Omaha High, that here we have a local organization that finds talent for national companies. Now, by the way, if they can do it, you know you can. You can step out of that boundary that you have self-imposed and create for yourself a place that has no boundaries whatsoever, that anything you want, you can get. So let's go now to this whole interviewing process about taking actors and putting them in front of cameras. And I want to relate this to job interviews if I can, so we'll take it step by step. How does an individual audition for a part, and what do they need to do to make sure that they get that part?
Okay, well, that's a tricky question, just like it with in a job interview.
Sure.
I mean, if somebody comes up and says, gee, what should I do, particularly a beginner? There are several things, but there are 4 basic things that I halfway kiddingly say the 4 B's.
Right.
You know, be professional.
Right.
Be adaptable.
Okay.
Be prepared. And be yourself.
Let me see if I can remember this. Okay. Be adaptable. I don't know if I remember it in order.
You don't have to.
Be professional. What are the other 2?
Be professional. Be adaptable.
Be adaptable.
Be prepared.
Be prepared.
And be yourself.
And be yourself. Now, isn't that exactly what each and every one of us need to do for a job interview? And by the way, I'm not just talking about a new company. I'm talking about promotional opportunities too, because you get auditioned for that. And if you remember those 4 basic steps, then you go in. But you're always competing against other people who are just as adept to these 4 items. So how does one stand out in the way you do it and for interviews?
Well, it's a little bit different, you know, how we do it for casting.
Sure.
Because quite honestly, and I always tell people, you do your best. Don't worry about the other people, because you can't control what the next person's doing.
Right.
And face it, no matter what you're doing, there's always somebody better, somebody worse. And you don't necessarily know what the person across the table who's interviewing is really looking for, particularly on an audition for a commercial. All you can control is yourself. You do the best you can do and feel good about that, and then hopefully you get the job.
I love that point, because how often do many of us go for a job interview and we're in that waiting room and we look around at the competition, and if I may, the other actors and actresses, and then all of a sudden what happens, we might become intimidated by maybe some of their looks or the way they prepare themselves or the way they're dressed. If we follow, or when we follow Randy's advice, who cares? Be yourself, because that interviewer, that director, might be looking for exactly you. And if you walk in and, well, I don't know, look at these people out there, they look a heck of a lot better than I am, you're not going to get anywhere, because you've lost your self-confidence and you've lost your self-esteem. So it's got to feel real good to find people and put them in either national commercials or local commercials. And that has a lot to do with job satisfaction.
Yeah, certainly from our standpoint. I mean, the true satisfaction, of course, is what the actors feel, because they finally get to land that part that they've been trying for, as you say.
Sure.
And again, it's the same thing with jobs. I mean, 90% of the time you're going to go for these things, you're not going to get it. The one difference, and I guess this makes it a little easier when you're auditioning for a commercial or a film,
right?
It's not quite as personal as maybe going for a job interview, where it's a little bit more dramatic. But yeah, you just can't take it personally, as I tell people. The minute you're done, if you've done the best you can, then almost forget about it. Hopefully you get that call that you got the job, but if not, then you go on to the next one. Don't worry about it. Don't let that drag you down and try to second guess yourself. What did I do wrong?
And that's called rejection. Now, I got to tell you, and I don't share a lot in these shows, but I'll tell you, you believe it or not, I've been rejected a couple times on a lot of different things. So what do? Mope around, my gosh, nobody likes me, and I'm going in this cyclone or circle of depression, and wow, I'm worthless. No, we take Randy's advice. You're going to get rejected. That's okay. You did your best. And maybe your best was not what they were looking for. The next one will be, which means one day you're going to get discovered. So let's talk about that discovery for a moment. There it is, somebody that's been waiting. We've all heard stories about people going to the drugstore, some director looking at them, all of a sudden they become famous. If I remember right, Pam Anderson was discovered in a baseball game because somebody actually focused on her face and loved her, and all of a sudden she became famous. So what is it about discovery? How does an actor or actress get discovered?
Well, sadly these days, at least from my point of view, discovery probably means a little bit different with all the reality shows out there and so forth. And people are being discovered not sadly because of their talent, but because they do something outrageous or they're on a show and make fools of themselves.
Right.
And to me that's a little bit sad, because it dilutes the folks that really try hard, that have gone to school to learn to act or have been in thousands of plays.
Right.
So the discovery process is a little bit different these days,
Okay.
and it makes it harder. It doesn't mean that people stop, but it certainly makes it a little trickier sometimes to weed your way through and get away from that reality mentality.
So if we take a legitimate actor or actress and we separate him from the reality shows, there's got to be a great feeling about discovering somebody and giving them that shot. And that's important for each and every one of us, because I know we're sitting there and we're saying, when is somebody going to discover me? You know, I listened to what Andy said earlier about admiration. I admire myself, but when is my admiration going to be discovered by other people? And again, what it depends upon is the way the person who's doing the interviewing or auditioning, the type of person that they're looking for. Because you know what? The job that you have now, the promotion that you got, the advances that you made in life, you've already been discovered many times over. But maybe this last one has been so elusive that you have forgotten about it. Well, don't, because each and every time it does come. And here, you know what? It came for 3 people in this world who now make $1 million every half hour. And man, they get a big bang out of it. And let's talk about the Big Bang Theory.
Oh, okay.
Are these guys and gals worth $1 million for a half hour's worth of work?
Well, apparently their producers think so, because that's what's paying them. Yeah, I suppose in the same way an athlete is. I mean, it can be argued, and some people do, that the really important work of the world are the people in the hospitals and the teachers and so forth, and we all admire them. But we also live in a society where capitalism is the key.
Right.
Well, these folks on the Big Bang Theory, the 3 actors who are getting $1 million an episode, well, they're on the #1 sitcom for how many years now? They help to generate tens of millions of dollars every week. So yes, they certainly deserve a portion of that. Yes. But then that's an argument individuals can make on whether somebody's really worth that.
And you know the story I love to read about is Jim Parsons. Why? Because he, if I remember correctly the number, he actually had 22 pilots that he was part of before the Big Bang Theory. And he did a great job in each and every one of them, but they never went on the air. Can you imagine the rejection there? Oh, yeah, I got called for a pilot. Hey, my agent just called me. You got a pilot coming up. He goes to the pilot, does a good job, gets the part, but it never airs because nobody bought the show. Did he give up? No. Did he go back to being a waiter if he ever was one? Probably not. He became persistent, had that tenacity, and just waited to be discovered. And why did he get the part? Because they were looking for someone to deliver the lines with a very unique rhythm. And he was the only person in the world to do it. So just because right now it might not be going exactly the way you want it, don't worry about it. I want you to think about the Jim Parsons model. I want you to think about, yes, that job, that advancement, that goal, that dream of mine is going to be happening to me. All I have to do each and every time is to go after it. So when you remember the old TV show Mission Impossible?
Sure.
Okay. I love that show, by the way. I live my life based on that and 2 other TV characters that I'll share at a different time, but not now. So in the beginning of the show, they had something impossible to do, and they had a bunch of pictures of people. Remember that?
Right.
Where they went about selecting the right face for the right thing. In casting, do they do the same thing?
By choosing by faces?
Yeah.
A lot of times, or at least they'll narrow it down to begin with, because face it, it's television, it's film.
Right.
The look is so much of that.
Right.
And that's another reason, getting back to your original question on rejection, why people can't take it personally.
Yeah.
A quick aside, we did a commercial not too long ago where they had a father and a mother and a little kid. Well, they had the kid all ready to go. So they had all these auditions for the mother and father. Well, most of them got rejected, not because they were bad actors, but because they didn't look like the parent of the kid. It was strictly the look.
So what's next for your company? What's next for Actors Etc. Limited?
Well, we always have lots of things. We've got a feature film hopefully coming up starting in October called It Snows All the Time, a film dealing with Alzheimer's, a feature film. Right. We'll hopefully be doing some casting starting sometime in the next few weeks. We also we're trying to work on our theater to go portion of trying to find a new venue to do our open to the public shows.
Right.
So, you know, we always have lots of irons in the fire, lots of commercials going on and so forth.
Well, Randy, we have learned a lot from you, because when people originally think of auditions and films and everything else that you're involved in, and talent agents and theater to go and movie producing, we have been able, based on the information Randy gave us, to translate all of that into things that are important in our life. And the one thing I want everybody to remember that from these discussions that we had with Randy, you will be discovered. Yes, you will be rejected. When you get rejected, don't worry about it. They just weren't looking for you. You have all the talents and skills just like an actor and an actress does. And by the way, in life, you're given a script. As well as you deliver that script, it could be a sales script, it could be an interview script. The great way that you do it is a marvelous thing for you. So let's review everything that you have allowed yourself to watch in today's Your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg. You learned about admiration. You learned about the refrigerator freezer. You learned about the personality testing and everything else that you've been involved with. And of course, that's one of the reasons that you tune in. There are additional things that you're also going to be able to learn from other items of your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg, and I wanted to save the best for the last, and I want to go back into this script thing. So you have an actor or actress, and everybody gets the part in advance. Mm-hmm. Why do people read it differently? I mean, come on, you get 5 or 6 different lines to do, and everybody's going to deliver it differently. Why does that happen?
Because, well, and it should. The actor needs to, and I always tell them, find what works best for you, what you're most comfortable with.
Right.
Because you're second guessing what the director or whoever's reading with you, what they want. You really never know unless they happen to give you direction ahead of time, and most of the time they don't. So you have to pick something, believe in it, and
right.
go for it.
Right.
And hope that's what they're looking for.
Right.
But going back to the one thing I said, being adaptable, if that director says, okay, that wasn't bad, but can you do it this way?
Yeah.
Be prepared
Sure.
to change your direction.
To be flexible.
To be flexible, and then hopefully you'll hit what they're looking for.
And flexibility is exceptionally important, not only in auditioning, but also in your life. Go ahead, if you can remember once again those 4 items that people said earlier, real quick.
Okay. Be prepared,
right?
Be professional,
right?
Be adaptable,
right?
And be yourself.
And there you go. And talking about being yourself, we look forward next week for you to return to your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg, because there's an old expression, it's like a zoo around here. And for that reason, we're going to have Dennis Pat, who's the executive director of the Omaha Zoo, the best in Omaha. He's going to teach us on how to be the best in everything that we do. Once again, it's been great having you here. We're going to see you again next week on your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg. Your Omaha High with Andy Greenberg was sponsored by OnCue Marketing, Best Buy Benches, OmahaFastFoods.com, Certified Transmission, Omaha Magazine, Monahan Financial, Sholdit, NP Dodge Real Estate, Valpak, Kohl's Pharmacy, Centrus Federal Credit Union, Ideal Water.